Okay, everyone, welcome to High Noon Club. I know we've got some people still in the cafe, but we need to kind of kick the meeting off and get started. I appreciate it. Do we have any first-time visitors here today? You raise your hand. Okay. Anyway, let's get started. We're going to start out with an open prayer, as we always do, and I'm looking for a prayer warrior. Okay. Okay, I'll do it myself. This will be the first in High Noon Club history. And then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag. Please bow your heads. Dear Father, as we bow our heads, we're so thankful that we can unite together in prayer. We so thank you for the United States of America and the leadership there, and we also thank you so much for the state of Oklahoma and the leadership that we have at our Oklahoma Capitol today. Lord, we ask you to keep us safe, keep us holy, Lord, and we ask you, those that are eating to bless their food. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You know, you're getting old when you almost forget to pledge allegiance you've been doing your whole life. I almost forgot that last one. So I apologize for that. What's that, Ed?
Are you apologizing for us getting old?
Yeah, we're apologizing for getting old. They say when you're old, you're cold, and I'm about freezing to death half the time. Today, we're very blessed once more in this room, the High Noon Club room, to have our guest speaker, the ex-Speaker of the House, Todd Hiett. So thank you very much, Todd, for being here this afternoon. Thank you very much. And today's topic is literally going to be about, not so much about what's going on at the Capitol today, but either though we can certainly discuss certain issues and ask opinions about that. However, I thought it would be very interesting to talk about how this actually happened in the state of Oklahoma. How did we go from being a majority Democrat state, from governors on down to the legislative bodies, to what we consider a conservative, and some of the news analysts and different people in the state consider to be the reddest of the red states? How did we actually get there? Let's take that journey. About, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, I attended a Oklahoma County GOP meeting. It was called the Lincoln Reagan Dinner for fundraising and I thought they did a genius thing there in that dinner, because what they did, they gathered all the previous Republican speakers with the exception of Speaker Chris Steele, in which Chris has been in this room. Remember him coming to High Noon Club and speaking during session. And the reason Chris couldn't be there, because he had already planned a wedding that he had to do and that kind of thing. But from having the first Republican speaker, Todd Hiett, who's our guest speaker today, to the current speaker, Jeff Hickman, and then talking about the journey, how we actually got there. And in a way, I was almost kind of embarrassed, because we forgot about how we actually got here. So anyway, that's what Todd's going to talk about hopefully today, and we can do our Q&A and do that kind of thing. And so we'll kind of go down memory road and kind of bring us up to speed on that. And then there was another guy in the room that got this very special award that we always kind of forget about. And he's here today too. A friend and a longtime High Noon Club member. In fact, one of the very first guys ever to become a High Nooner, and probably to his embarrassment, is our current state auditor, Gary Jones. So that's going to be kind of today's theme. Let's discuss, talk about it, and thanks again to Todd, ex-Speaker Todd Hiett, for coming and talking. One other thing happened here, maybe like a month or so ago. I can't quite remember. Is Don Spencer? Yeah, Don. Yeah, you're here. Come on up here. I want to brag one more time on Don Spencer, and it's not so much for bragging. It's on appreciating what a volunteer actually does, because this again was very unique, and it kind of touched me when this actually happened. A month or so ago, I don't know the ones that remember, that Don came and he gave his presentation and he talked about what's going on at the Capitol, the OK2A, and on and on and on, and did that. And I thought he did a very eloquent way of presenting, and he literally has become, to me, like a specialist in lobbying for Second Amendment rights and our Oklahoma City rights and some of the amendments out at the Capitol. So I've actually had this credential that's complete to do a whole bunch of different stuff, investigation stuff and security type stuff and on and on. But if anybody ever asks me about the policies and anything about the Second Amendment, don't ask me that. That's not that. What I do, I give them Don's telephone number.
Exactly, yes he does.
That I do. I give it all. Now, also in the room on that day was my brother-in-law, Neil. Now, he is a security expert, I can assure you. He was one of the first probably 10 or 12 people that Homeland Security ever hired when they started Homeland Security. And when he left the room, he was like, my gosh, that guy knows what he's talking about, doesn't he? I said, yeah, he does. Yeah, he does. Because here's a grassroots guy that he doesn't get paid to do something, but he's got a heart for it in government. And he does it, and he does it very loyally, and that's how we conservatives get what we want. And that's exactly the opposite how we conservatives don't get what we want, when we don't have volunteers like Don stepping up to the plate and doing this kind of thing. So again, I'd love to give you an award, but High Noon Club, you know we don't endorse people, we don't give out awards, and we're not doing that stuff, because the thing about giving out an award to you, as soon as we give you an award, you're going to do something that we don't like, and we're going to hate you, and we want to take an award about. But what I will do, I'm going to give you a check. And this check is not from me. This is from another High Noon Club member. I'm not going to tell you who it is, because they didn't want to be recognized, but Don did such a great presentation of what OK2A, I'm going to give you this check from him to you. So there's your check for OK2A. Again, first time ever. And I think generally when you do something good, somebody's going to pay you, and there's your payment right there. Yeah, okay? So thank you very much. And I don't want you to say anything. Okay, I don't want you to say anything. But I appreciate it, okay? Thank you for doing what you're doing at our Capitol. So there you are. There's a warrior right there for you. I mean, there's a guy that's going to make things happen. And one of these days, what I'm going to tell you, I don't know exactly where you live, but I kind of got an idea. You're the kind of guy that I want at the Oklahoma Capitol representing me. You're right there. Not High Noon Club, me, because we don't go High Noon Club. Okay. Now another thing. I'm going to tell you a little funny story, and then we get to you can do your little deals. Little funny story. I just got back from San Diego. There's a lady by the name of Barbara Decker that's going to challenge the Democrat incumbent to this district in San Diego. And I'm telling you, talk about some high-priced property. It's almost kind of like Midwest City. I'm telling you, it's very close to nature. I mean, you're talking right on the beach, 50 miles right on the beach in the ocean, all downtown San Diego or whatever. I mean, it's a very expensive property. The district is about 400,000 people, so it's like running a congressional district. She is going to, this is a woman, Barbara Decker, she's a Republican, she's going to challenge the current new Speaker of the House of the state of California. It's a Democrat that lives in that district. Guess what? She's everything that probably most of you in here hate. Okay? Now I didn't say like, you probably hate them if you really want to talk about it. And here's what. She's a Democrat to begin with. Now, High Noon Club, we want the most liberal, most liberal, most conservative, come together, discuss the issue, whatever, that kind of thing. And hopefully somewhere in the middle, we're going to find the right answer. But anyway, she's a lesbian. And we can just go on down, right on down the line. And they will probably spend $50 million if need be to keep her as a speaker in the state of California, the speaker. So that's going to be a tough race, wouldn't you think, Todd? I mean, would that be a tough race to run? You're a Republican running in a district. You're going to challenge us, not just a regular member of the Assembly of California, but the current new Speaker of the House for California. So that's tough. So what I told her, Barbara, bless your heart, that's the kind of people that really need to get engaged. That's a founding fathers type principle. She's got a little money. She didn't have that kind of wealth to be throwing $50 million rates, obviously. But she's 67 years old. She's engaged in the community. She understands what needs to happen. And rather than just worrying about the grandchildren, I'm going to say we're always doing this stuff for the grandchildren. We better start doing this stuff for us. Because the grandchildren, without changing certain kind of things, the grandchildren are going to have to worry about nothing. Inherit that thing. So anyway, so the funny part of the story, I'm at the La Jolla Country Club yesterday. Now this place, how many have been to Southern Hills Golf Course? Southern Hills, okay? That's a nice place, Southern Hills. That's really nice. It's not nice like La Jolla, I can assure you. Because Because Southern Hills, they don't have this ocean you look out and all that kind of stuff. We get them golf balls and all that stuff. So anyway, so we're gonna attend the Women's Republican, La Jolla Women's Republican Club meeting. That's what we're gonna do. Barbara, she's gonna go give a presentation. I wanna hear the presentation. And there's another lady that's come to high noon. Her name's Debbie Frank. She was there too. Debbie is somebody that's from Fort Worth, grew up in Fort Worth. She epitomized what you'd think somebody who graduated University of Texas in Fort Worth. Okay, that's her. Okay, fiery, very outspoken Texan. Okay, which I like. I mean, I did. But anyway, so we show up at this country club, and now I've been to Pebble Beach. I've been to a lot of these other places. They're nice. This is very nice too, and the same deal. So we show up, and I've got my jeans on because, gosh, we're from Oklahoma. And Debbie shows up, and she's probably got her jeans on too. And them jeans didn't cost $15 like mine did from Walmart. I can assure you, them probably cost $250 or $350 or whatever. And she's very appropriately, I thought, dressed. No, not for there, it wasn't. That was wrong type dress. So they immediately told us we could not participate in their Republicans women's meeting because we had jeans on. And I said, well, I'm sorry because I'm from Oklahoma and we don't know any better. And obviously she's from Texas and she didn't know any better either. However, well, we're sorry, this and that. And I said, okay, fine. So I told Debbie at that time, I said, no, just hold on here. We're not done with this deal yet. We're going to have some fun with this. And I'm very concerned about Barbara because she's going to speak to this ladies group. So I said, well, we don't want to cause her no trouble because Debbie wants to fight this woman, or bite her probably. But anyway, so we're kind of sitting back there, and the woman told us just hold on and she'd see what she can do. What she's seen and what she's going to do is see how quick she can get us on out of there. That's what we know is going to happen. But so we sit down there, and we wait for about 15 or 20 minutes or so, and we go on and on and on, and we're yakking back and forth. I told Debbie, I said, you just wait and see what's going to happen here next. I got it all planned out here now. Just give me about 2 or 3 seconds, and we can generally kind of plan out a little what we're going to do. So anyway, we're sitting there and laughing and talking, and some other people come around. And there's another guy that's running for a congressional seat out there that I think we're going to help too, and we're going to hopefully bring the state to do some fundraising and stuff. His name is Larry Wilkie. He's a 30-year Navy SEAL that was highly involved in Iraq and Afghanistan operations. He's running, so I'm talking to him too, and we're kind of teasing him, and we're kind of working that deal. And so anyway, so we get all done. Finally, the woman that's like the president of the La Jolla Women's Republic Club, bless her heart, I think her name was Nancy. She comes out, and she got her little name badge on and stuff, and she says, she said, I'm just sorry that you guys cannot stay for this meeting because of your jeans. You just can't stay. I said, really? I said, is it because I'm a Mexican? So Todd, I'm telling you, she almost died right on the spot. Because there's no humor in this at all with her. Because we're talking about these bunch of elitist thinkers, okay, that are conservative, obviously, but elitist type thinkers. Oh my gosh, the commentary she gave me, the panic that set in on her breath. Well, you don't look like a Mexican. I said, well, what's a Mexican look like? You start doing all that kind of stuff and just teasing them back. She don't know what to say. The poor thing's about to have a coronary arrest. You're going to have to go to the hospital very quickly. But anyway, so tease her a little bit more, and eventually we got up and left, and I said, now, do y'all have any, grass we can mow out there or something on the way out there, trim your trees or something, because we'll be on the park lot. So that's why I've got a red face today. Not because I'm embarrassed to be with y'all, it's because of the parking lot at the Hoya Country Club in San Diego. So again, you've got to kind of fight some of these battles in a humorous type way, and if you get too serious with life at all, you're probably not going to have any fun, and you're probably not going to have a following. So let's kind of bring that theme on today and enjoy today and appreciate people like ex-Speaker Todd Hiett and Gary Jones would have fight for years for our conservative issues going on in Oklahoma. It's never going to be perfect. It won't be perfect, but we should appreciate what we do have. That does not mean we don't battle, and try to get more and more conservative. I'm not saying that either, but let's appreciate what we do have and then kind of enjoy that particular ride. Okay, you know I normally don't talk this long, and I promise I'll never say another word today, unless given the opportunity. But let's go with if you got announcements for communities or clubs, let's do that. I appreciate Rick Moore and Marlene coming today, Logan County people that have been starting these meetings up in Logan County, and I'm telling you, doing an outstanding job. They're doing meetings on Friday. So sometimes we got a maxed out house, but what we really want to do, we would like to have more meetings around the state, like Logan County people doing that, than just filling this room up every time and out in these different areas of the community. So I appreciate you guys very much.
This is Mike. The announcements include if you're running for office? Yeah, okay. Well, I'm Mike, and last week the current county commissioner, Rusty Sullivan, who was found by a multi-county grand jury to be guilty of crimes, announced he wasn't running for office. Nobody filed against him earlier. I announced I was running, and I have got 4 opponents, so I guess it's easier to beat me than it is to beat a guy that everybody knows is a criminal, so I'm not feeling real great today.
You got 4 opponents, okay. All right, any other announcements? And your name, sir?
My name is Don. I want to bring to your attention that Matt Kibbe has got a new book out entitled Don't Hurt People and Don't Take Their Stuff, a Libertarian Manifesto. And this is a fantastic read and it's perfect for all of us. Get one. You'll enjoy it.
Hi, I'm David Modwicks. Earlier today, I filed with the state election board to run for the Oklahoma House of Representatives, and I'm running on 3 main issues: to prove that youth is active in the Republican Party, and we are in the future, to repeal Common Core, and to fix our state's budget. Thank you.
Okay, what house are you running?
District 91. Mike Reynolds is term limited, and he's been a great defender of the Constitution, and I'd like to continue in his footsteps.
You do know there's opposition to Mike Reynolds, right?
Yes, I'm very aware.
Okay, I'll just tease you. Thank you for doing that. Okay, any other special announcements? Okay, next speaker, Todd Hiett. The Honorable Todd Hiett, if you'll step to the microphone and we'll unhook that wire, you can rotate that thing around, and you've got as much time as you want to talk, and then after that, we'll go into Q&A. Again, big round of applause, Speaker Hiett.
Many years as livestock auctioneer, and so I like having it stationary like this in case I need to break out into some duty experience a little bit. So, well, thank you again for the opportunity to come and share with you today. And you know, this may go down as one of my favorite opportunities, and because when Bob first mentioned it to me, he said we'd like for you to come and visit about what it was like taking the majority and just kind of tell some of the old war stories. And I'm telling you, the only challenge I have today is where to cut it off, because there are so many stories. It was a very interesting time in history, and so many stories that you don't quite know where to start. But I thought I'd give you just a little bit of a perspective of me and how I got involved in politics to start with. And I was in the early 90s. My wife and I had started a dairy farm. I grew up ranching, and so in order to kind of to expand out from that, my wife and I, we were married and young and had young children, had this dairy farm, and I was not political. Probably, I know I couldn't have told you who my state representative was. Probably didn't know that I had a state representative, and it's very possible I couldn't have told you who the governor was. And furthermore, I didn't care. I had no interest. I was interested in my business, and that was all I was doing. Until one day, I got a letter that my herd had been quarantined because of a federal program coming down, a brucellosis eradication program that had been around for 20 years. They were trying to phase it out across the United States. Oklahoma was still receiving all of the federal money flowing through and enforcing this program. And they quarantined my herd, and they quarantined me for over a year. I couldn't market. And keep in mind now, I'm in my 20s. I've already borrowed money. You know, I'm in business. I'm trying to hold it together. And if you've never been in the dairy business, cash is not just readily available. It's tough. And plus, you have to continue to take care of the livestock. And so they treated me like absolute trash. over the course of that year. They would come whipping into my ranch, my dairy, in those white trucks with the black stickers on the sides, you know, government, whatever it said on the side of it, and here'd come a crew of them. They'd say, get the cattle in the corrals. We're going to bleed cattle today, and I had to do it, and it was ugly. And I will say, I was young and mouthy, and so I didn't treat them very well either. But they treated me like absolute trash, like I did not even count in the world. And in the process, just about broke me. At the end of the year, I had complied with everything they had asked, and then they decided they needed more. They needed to go further and get another clean blood test on the whole herd. And I just put my foot down, and of course I didn't know any better. I didn't know I couldn't put my foot down. Well, they fined me many thousands of dollars. I couldn't even spell how many thousands of dollars they were talking about at the time, and all these penalties, and on and on and on. And so I had to get some help. I had to find out how to get to the bottom of it. And so I had a friend that I thought might know something. He was able to help get me on the agenda for the Board of Agriculture. And so I went before the Board of Agriculture. I'd done a lot of research before that, and I realized that this federal program was being phased out across the United States, and every state, for a state to maintain that flow of funding, they had to have 3 live herds, 3 herds testing positive or suspected of having brucellosis. Guess how many herds Oklahoma had at that time? 3, counting mine. And so I was able to make a case to the Board of Agriculture that they were, the federal government, in conjunction with the state government at the time, were holding my herd hostage just to keep those millions of dollars of federal funding flowing into the state. They ruled in my favor. They fired the state veterinarian that had been with the department for 17 years at that time. It was like 2 weeks after that. They did not give a stated reason for firing him, so I will never know if it was because of that, but I will always assume it probably had something to do with that. So at that time, I decided I probably better figure out who my state representative is and how that business works down in Oklahoma City. I'd never been there, and could have cared less about it, but I kind of got looking into it and I would get alerts of an issue coming up, and I would call my state representative, and I was just a nervous wreck. I mean, I was just hoping I'd get a machine, because I was afraid that this big important person might ask me a tough question, and I'd call and I'd say, I'm opposed to this bill, or whatever the case may have been at the time, and one thing led to another. I continued to get more and more involved until I ended up running for the House of Representatives. Had just too dumb to know any better. I lived in a Democrat district. It was 70% Democrat. Had never had Republicans. There was not a single elected Republican in the whole county at that time. But I didn't know that made any difference. I was too dumb to know. And so I just signed up, and my wife and I went to work just like we did on everything else, and started campaigning. And the Democrats took me for granted, because they thought this idiot dairy farmer kid is running as a Republican. He's so dumb, he doesn't even know he needs to sign up as a Democrat if he's going to win. And so as a result, I was able to win that. And I came into the House, and of course Mike was not there. I know Paul wasn't, but when I first came in, I don't think anyone here was there when I first came in, but I would have been voted, I can guarantee you this, I would have been voted least likely to have ever become Speaker of the House, because I bought my first suit on the way to the Capitol for the swearing in. After the election, I had never owned a suit. Went by the Stroud Tanger Mall on the way. My wife had been begging me for days, Todd, we have to go to town and get you a suit, because we got this information from the House of Representatives, and it says you have to have coat and tie on to come and be sworn in, and you've won this race. And I said, well, we'll stop by Stroud, by that mall, and buy me a suit on the way to the Capitol. And so we did, and I said, I'll take this one right here. I said, I didn't know suits didn't come fit to length, like jeans. And it had all this leg hanging off the suit, and I said, well, I'll take that one right there. If you just fix the legs for me, and I'll be on my way. He said they'd be ready next Tuesday. I said, no, wait a minute now. I'm going to the House of Representatives to be sworn in as a member, and I have to have a suit today. So what did we do? We got some tape, and we rolled those cuffs under. And we taped those suit legs, those breeches legs up on that suit, and I went to the Capitol and was sworn into the House of Representatives, duct tape and all. And so you see, I would have been least likely to have ever been state representative. But you know, it was probably the best time. I really believe it was the toughest time probably, but it was, I really treasure the time, the opportunity that I had to spend that particular time in the legislature, because I'm one of a dying breed in politics. I got to see the old regime. I got to see it live and in action. The first week that I was there on the job, Gene Stipe idled up to me one night at a function, and I, you know, hello, Mr. Stipe. You know, I recognized him from all the, you know, prison records and things that you've seen around, and so I, you know, hello, Mr. Stipe, and or Senator Stipe, and I'm Todd Hiett, and he said, I know who the H you are, and I said, you're Todd Hiett, you're that little SOB that beat a Democrat out in Creek County. I said, yes, sir. And he said, you know I own the paper out there. I said, yes, sir, and don't forget it. So I saw that, you know, I saw all of that, and that's just one. I could go on and on and on of those types of little things that I saw that were just so much of the culture at that time. But after a couple, 3 years being there, I thought, this is the biggest waste of time I have ever engaged in my life. We're in the minority. They wouldn't let us, if we introduced a bill, it was either not going to be heard, or if they happened to like the bill, the Democrats just took the bill away from us and put their name on it and introduced it. And so at least we maybe would get one through once in a while, but it was never with a Republican name. They would not allow us a seat at the table. They would not allow any input. I mean, it was a different time. I will tell you, the Republicans today are much better to the Democrats than the Democrats were to the Republicans back in that day and time. But I got to see all that. I got to see the old regime, the old nasty political culture that existed in that place. And I was ready to go home. I'd seen all I could stand to that, and so I was ready to go home. It was a waste of time. I knew I just realized I'm never going to be able to accomplish anything here, so we'll figure out another way to do it. But then I caught the majority fever. I kind of bought into this notion. Frank Keating was governor at the time, and he was talking a lot about, you know, that if we really worked at it, we could take a majority, we could have a Republican majority. And everyone's thinking, you know, I don't know how we'd ever do that in Oklahoma. But I caught the fever and decided, that's what we're going to do. And so I, along with these guys and many others, we went to work, and we started recruiting candidates all across the state. We didn't have money. We didn't have budgets. We were scraping to raise enough money to run these races all across the state. And we would drive into a community, and we'd go to all the local churches and the local businesses and just everywhere we could, just scouring the earth trying to find good conservatives to run. And then you had to convince them that a Republican could win in those areas. And one time I remember we went all the way out to Guyman. And this would have been probably in 2000 maybe. I think I might have been minority leader at the time, or right before that maybe. But anyway, Chris Steele and Lance Cargill were freshmen that year, and they loaded up in my truck, and we went to Guyman, and we were going to elect a Republican out there. Jack Begley had been the Democrat stronghold out there forever, and that area was never going to be Republican, but we thought we could elect a Republican out there. And so we drove out there, and we campaigned and knocked doors and did all the things you do. And then that evening, of course, we had to have a place to stay. None of us had any money. And so we checked into the junkiest little hotel. I mean, it gives me the heebie-jeebies to even think about where we stayed. It was the junkiest little place. And, of course, you know, we weren't going to get more than one room. That'd have been a waste of money. So one room had 2 little beds in it. And, you know, I'm the minority leader, you know, at the time, or at least the senior member, you know. I mean, you have these 2 freshmen, and so I think, well, you know, I guess I'll get a bed, and, you know, the other 2 have to sleep together. No, the freshmen said, no, we're going to draw straws. And so Lance and I drew the short straws, and so I had to sleep in this little cardboard bed with Lance Cargills. And I will tell you, and you can tell him I said so, he snores like nothing you've ever heard in your life. So I didn't sleep a wink that night. But anyway, those were that's just the way we did it back then. We didn't know any better other than just Gary Jones will say, will tell you one thing that I said to him that he repeated back to me several times. I said, you know, Gary, I said, so many of these political people, they just want to analyze and they want to do this and do all this stuff. I said, sometimes someone just has to get in the truck and go do it, you know, and that's a lot of the problem that we saw. But that's exactly what we did. But it was not an easy time. It was fun. I will say, as miserable as it was, we enjoyed every minute of it because. And I think the reason we enjoyed it so much, I think we enjoyed our time then more. I mean, and this is just my observation in conversations with legislators. We have legislators here that could speak to it better than I could. But in the current atmosphere, I think we enjoyed it more back then. But it was because if we were a Republican, you didn't go down there and be a Republican unless it was on purpose. You wanted to be a Republican because there was nothing convenient, nothing fun about being a Republican back then. But we started recruiting candidates and we were making some gains and I think it was 1998 was a year that we had big gains but we had that was still when we did a lot of things, pretty old-fashioned style in terms of the campaigning. And we had a little mail house that we had contracted with over in the Tulsa area to do all the Northeast Oklahoma house races. And one night, I got a call in the middle of the night. It was like 4 in the morning, actually. And the mail house had broken down. And the lady that owned the mail house, it was just 2 ladies. It was a mother and daughter. And the lady that was in charge there had a nervous breakdown and started screaming at all the staff, and all the staff went on strike, and they called the police and all this. Well, this was Saturday morning, October 31st, 1998. We had boxes of mail for what ended up being representatives, John Smoligo, Chris Benge, and Sue Tibbs. And their mail was all still sitting there in the floor. It was Saturday morning before the Tuesday election. It had to go out that day. I took off that morning and I called my mother, and of course my wife started calling friends, my mother started calling friends. We started gathering volunteers because we knew we got over there, we tried to fix their machinery, but I didn't know anything about it. We had to just bring in volunteers and put stick-on labels on all of those cards, and but we didn't have a way to meter it because all that stuff was broken down, and this lady was back there in the back room having a nervous breakdown. When we first got there, she wouldn't let us in. She was holding all of our stuff hostage, and my mother went to the door, talking through a door to her. You think I'm making this stuff up, but you can't make this stuff up. my mother is talking to this lady through the door, and that lady's just mad, and she's saying, I give up, I quit, I'm in nervous breakdown. And finally, my mother got us in, and so we started sticking labels on. One problem, we didn't have any postage. It was Saturday morning. I started going post office to post office, and I personally couldn't do this today. They wouldn't take checks today like this probably, but I personally wrote checks and purchased $10,000 first-class stamps that day. But I could just get 500 here and maybe 250 over here. I had to go just post office to post office to buy enough stamps for all of us to stick on. And we took them back down there and we stuck them, and then I had to haul all the stuff down to the processing center, which then at that time was in Tulsa. You remember there on kind of near downtown at that time. And I made a friend down there because I knew I was desperate need of a friend because they were shutting down. It was Saturday and they shut down. I think it was like at 2 or 3 o'clock. But I talked this person into letting us continue to go because we were just ginning that stuff out as fast as we could. We'd get a load and I'd head down there with it. And I was able to talk them into staying open until midnight that night. So from 4 in the morning until midnight the next night, we were cranking the mail out. They finally at midnight, he said, I violated every rule in the book by allowing you to continue to bring in, and I just have to stop right here. One of those members did not get their mail out. It was the last one. We were started on it, but couldn't get it mailed out, and it was Sue Tibbs. And Sue Tibbs was running against a Tulsa icon at the time, Betty Boyd, and that year she lost. Sue lost, but came within 50 votes of winning. And so I will forever know, if we could have been able to get that one out, Sue would have been elected. She came back 2 years later and ended up getting elected. But those were just a lot of the things that we did. It was the way we did it back then, and I'm not saying it was a good way, but it was just the only way that we had to do it. And we finally got to a majority in 2004, and that was interesting all in itself, because I guess I underestimated the Democrats' shock. They really, I don't think they saw it coming, and I don't think they fully understood what it was going to be like, because they had been in the majority for 100 years, and so that's all they knew, and I don't think they understood what it was like. And so, I mean, you're talking about resistance. It was the worst battle I've ever been in my life. They were doing everything they could to cut our throats, and they were mad, they were confused, they didn't quite know how to handle it. I had one of the first days, I mean, one of the first things, because I simply just went in and started doing what we had been saying we were going to do, and that was, we're going to kind of shape up the house here, shape up the place. And so one small thing was the tea and coffee, and I think they still do it at the Capitol. I think I heard they reinstated this program, but the tea and coffee, every morning you had a team of sergeants that would get all these little carts and put water and tea and coffee pot and deliver it to every senator's, every House member's offices. Set it, they'd have ice and tea in there. They'd set it there in the office. No one would drink it. No, I mean, who was going to drink that open top pitcher? You know, people sneezing everywhere and all, you know, and so they set all that stuff there. And then every evening they had to, the same sergeants had to come back around, gather all that stuff back up, go pour it all down the drain, wash the deal, start over the next morning. So I thought, you know, legislators can go down the hall. There was a little kitchen thing where, you know, all this was produced. And I thought, you know, the legislators, if they want a pitcher of tea, it's down there. They can just go get their ice and get a pitcher of tea. And easy as that. I really didn't even give that a second thought. I just didn't expect any kind of negative reaction. But yet I had a revolt. It was my first revolt. The next morning, all of the staff, the Democrat staffers and some legislators, to their discredit, lined up down the hall, and they were trying to make a point that it was impossible. You know, the congestion would be too great, and it was impossible for this to work this way. They lined up down the hallway, and because you could just get your tea one person at a time, and so you had this huge line, and then the person would get the tea and coffee pitchers, and then they would come back down the hall, spilling it everywhere, making a huge mess. I mean, an all-out, old-fashioned revolt happened because I said we could go get our own coffee. Now that was the mentality that we were dealing with at the time. Opio Toure, do you all remember Opio? And I think he passed away a few years ago, but he was quite a character. You couldn't underestimate him. He was smart, he was tough, he could be downright mean sometimes. But one thing he did when we first took over, of course, the Democrats had to vacate their offices and move up to those old little bitty junk offices that we had been inhabiting for several years. But Opio was right next to the Speaker's office. His office was, and he wouldn't vacate. And of course, my staff was all, you know, they were saying, we've got to get him kicked out, we've got to get security in here and get him removed and stuff. I knew Opio, though. I knew what he wanted. He wanted us to get security involved and make some big blown up deal, and then it would have looked like we were, you know, being racist and we were being partisan, and you know, I know Opio, I know exactly what he was trying to do, and I just said, no, leave him there, just leave him there, and bless his heart, I can't remember who our member was, whose office that was going to be, but he didn't get his office for 2 weeks. I said, just leave him there, and every day Opio was sitting in there. And finally, Opio had just had all he could stand of watching Republicans run the House of Representatives, and so he packed up his stuff and left. But that was the childishness that we had to deal with. And then we had a governor. We elected a Democrat governor that well, no, he actually was already there, Brad Henry. So I had a Republican speaker. There were 57 of us there. Paul was there, Mike was there, Gary was of course, Gary was chairman the year in 2004 when we took the majority. Was party chairman, and Randy was over in the Senate. We had Brad Henry, and we had Cal Hobson was the Senate leader that year. So you had Democrat Senate, Democrat governor, and a Republican majority in the House. And so what are we going to do with that? You know, and so we started trying to negotiate some things, and it was not going very well because the Democrats just they just really didn't understand. And I say this I say it very sincerely. It wasn't so much that they were just, stomping their feet. It was just they really didn't get it. They really did not get the fact that they did not have absolute control in this state anymore, did they, Randy? I mean, they just couldn't grasp it. And so Henry and I, we were at war. It looked like the whole place was just going to melt down. Well, I forgot to say, and y'all can just have to tell me shut up in a minute, but I forgot to say the other thing that I did was I reduced the staff. I started looking through all the job descriptions of the staff of the House of Representatives and found out that a lot of them didn't even have job titles. One job title was, this guy was on, it wasn't in writing, but we asked, well, what's the guy's job title? Well, he handles the car for the House of Representatives. Well, why does the House of Representatives have a car? And, well, because if legislators get out and have too much to drink at night, he goes and gets some and takes them home. Now, again, can't make this stuff up. I'm serious. That was what I was told was his job. So, okay, so I did let go 12% of the staff. You would have thought it was 2/3, and I was thinking, I was almost embarrassed. I thought I'm going to get the tar beat out of me because everyone's going to say, surely you could do better than 12%. That's what I was thinking. But I thought this is a start. 12% of the staff. Daily Oklahoman, which was the paper that favored us more at the time, headline across the top. The front page next day was Hiett's Reign of Terror. Because I laid off 12% of the staff, of which did not have job descriptions, or at least legitimate job descriptions, I guess I should say. And so, made it through that. We started, of course, the policy negotiations with the governor, and he and I were it just wasn't working because he wouldn't give any credence to anything that the House of Representatives had to say because he didn't think he had to. And so one day I got aggravated and the press all came in for something. It wasn't even on this subject, but I was in some kind of press conference and they started asking me some questions, and I was just so frustrated with it at that time. And on the particular issue that we were dealing with, I said, Brad Henry's out there telling one thing, and either he does not understand his own policy, or he's a snake oil salesman, and he's misleading the public. I said one or the other. There's no other choices. Well, what do you think from the headline on the front page? Next day was, Speaker calls Governor a snake oil salesman. So I was in a meeting in Tulsa, and I got a call. I mean, apparently Brad Henry just scoured the earth until he found me, and someone came into the meeting I was having and said, Governor Henry's on the phone and would like to speak to you. And I said, well, I'll call him back here in just a little bit. I'm finishing this meeting. And so I came back a little bit. He needs to speak to you right now. And I'm thinking, Lord, we've had someone's declared war on Oklahoma. We got a major emergency. I pick up the phone as Governor. How can I help you? And he said, Todd, I just can't believe you said that about me. After all I've done for you. And I said, Governor, with all due respect, exactly what is it that you've done for me? He said, the rest of the guys didn't even want to let you have a seat at the table. And I told him that I thought you should have a seat at the table. And that's the only reason you even got to be a part of this discussion. And I said, oh, Governor. And in his defense, it wasn't that he was just having a hissy fit or anything. It wasn't that. It was truly had not processed in his mind yet. I said, Governor, I said, you didn't give me a seat at that table. The people of Oklahoma gave me a seat at that table, and I intend to sit in it until we make some changes in this state. And it was dead silence. And you could just hear his wheels turning on the other end of the line. And from that day on, everything changed. That was, in my opinion, probably the single pivotal moment in Oklahoma state legislative history in terms when the shift of power really happened. That was the moment. The election day, of course, would be the obvious moment when we took the majority, but the real practical moment when you had a major shift in power away from the old regime happened that very moment on that very phone call, because he got it. He understood it when I put it in those very plain terms. And so from that point forward, we worked together. We still fought. Obviously, we were philosophically apart, but we were able to come together. We made some things happen. They tried to set traps for me everywhere. One thing they did was I need to wind down, don't I? One trap or deal they were going to try to embarrass me. Of course, the Senate just hated me. Then Cal Hobson had left. Of course, he didn't care for me either, but Mike Morgan just hated me. And of course, he wears jewelry now designed by the Department of Corrections. So, did I say that? Anyway, I had part of our caucus platform that year, Mike and Paul were part of it, we had 6 planks. And one of the planks was to reduce the income tax rate. And we had decided that we thought the rate was 6.65% at that time. And we decided lowering it to 5.5% was a good, we knew we had a Democrat Senate, and it was going to be an uphill climb, but we thought if we can lower it to 5.5%, that would be a good starting place. Not enough, but a good starting place. And so I'm out there pushing it. Of course, all the usual forces are coming out and saying, how awful this is, and world's coming to an end, all that stuff, Hiett's evil, and all that, and hates kids and old ladies, and you've heard all the stuff, and so they, we went along probably a few weeks and with that discussion, and we weren't making a whole lot of progress, but then the Senate decided to get cute, and they thought, Morgan thought, we'll just embarrass Hiett and make him look like that he's soft on tax cuts. And so they passed a bill. My staff all came in my office one day and they were in a complete panic. My staff, in a panic. They said, oh, the Senate just passed out a tax bill to lower the rate to 4.9%. And I just smiled. They said, well, you don't understand that. That's going to make you look bad. It's going to make, because your bill now is going to be considered, your, and in my state, how staff, they're just trying to be protective of me. And the whole time I'm just grinning from ear to ear. And my staff finally said, what are you going to do? I said, put my name on it. I always wanted to be a co-author of a Democrat Senate bill lowering the rate to 4.9%. So they went right then and put my name on there as the House author of the bill. And so I met with the governor that afternoon, and Governor, he's hoping he realizes what a dumb maneuver that the Senate Democrats made here, but he's hoping that maybe I'm just kidding. So we get in there with the governor and Meacham, I don't know, whoever powers to be at the time, said, what's your intention in handling this tax bill? We understand the Senate's passed. I said, well, I love it. I said, I thought y'all would finally come around and start to understand tax policy. And I'm just so pleased. You just don't know how excited I am. And so I said, I don't have any pride of authorship. I would liked for it to have been my House bill and all that stuff, but hey, if we want to make it a Democrat Senate bill, I'm good with that as long as we lower the rates. And the governor looked at his staff and said, see, I told you, he's serious. So after all of the, negotiation and stuff, we ended up settling right in between. I was at 5.5. They were supposedly at 4.9, just being cute. And we ended up settling at 5.25 was the rate that we ended up settling on that year. And I mean, to this day, I just laugh every time I think about the Democrats' cuteness actually lowered the rate more than it would have been lowered if I would have just had my way. It would have been, if I'd had my perfect way, it would have been 5.5. If they would have just continued in negotiation, it probably would have been closer to 6, or something that we would have ended up with. And so, anyway, those are the types of things. And so I'll wind down, but it was fun. It was tough, but it was fun because, again, as I said before, we knew why we were there. We weren't there because it was cool to be there or fun to be there. We knew why we were there. We were there to change this state, and I really believe we did. We didn't do all that we would have liked to have done, but I really do believe that we did make a difference. And I would say to the young man, and maybe there were some others that said they're candidates, new candidates for office. I know we have some of my old hands here too, but the new candidates for office. I think whether you're a legislator or any political position, I would hope you always have in your mind, if put on the spot right now, can I articulate, and you don't always get to do exactly what you want to do. That's part of the process, and it's designed that way. But can you articulate what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Are you just running for office to run for office? Or is there a specific mission, a specific change that you think needs to be made? And so I would encourage any of you running for office to always keep that in mind. And I see Bob's got his roaming mic there, so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Todd, thank you. How we actually do this, Todd, is I'm the old Phil Donahue. I know we've got a lot in common, Phil and I, and that's how we've kind of padded this, so we'll do our Q&A. But one of the things, again, I want to kind of tell our members of High Noon Club that, I've come to, after that meeting, at the GOP meeting, the county GOP meeting, I kind of got to thinking about this deal. Was when we went into business, we worked for about 14 years without ever taking a vacation. It's kind of almost 7 days a week, and it was kind of not real good. And there wasn't a lot of cash flowing, so when I'd go out and work, and I'd stop at like a McDonald's or something, get a couple of real nasty, basic hamburgers from that, and it was like, because we didn't really have the money or didn't want to spend it, and that kind of thing. And then it wasn't always as good as it was today. And it's kind of relates back to, like I say, the House of Representatives or Oklahoma government. It always wasn't like this it is today. And I think a lot of times we people, not just in age, me included, we take it for, we're kind of almost like, the analogy would be like a teenager that inherits a great amount of wealth, and they never really appreciate how hard dad, mom, or grandma and grandpa worked for that wealth. And that's kind of us here in Oklahoma and our conservatism. The battles we're now fighting in conservatism in Oklahoma is not that everybody, I mean literally everybody, we've got, and I say this in all due respect, and I'm glad Randy's here because he's going to be part of my deal. I'm going to say this. We've got 3 people going to run for the Senate. Randy Brogdon, we've got T.W. Shannon, we've got James Langford. Any 3 of those guys, the people, the conservatives in the state of California would die for to represent them in California. Die for it. Because they've got Feinstein and Boxer, Senator Boxer. And I can assure you, they would die to have either one of them. So that's where we're kind of at in Oklahoma politics. I mean, and it's good too. It's a good thing because it's kind of like a business. A business survives the survival of the fittest. So we want stronger and stronger candidates. We don't want weaker and weaker ones. So again, Todd, you kind of make that possible by you working in the grassroots and working from behind the scenes, and you gave us like that wealth of political conservatism towards Oklahoma. You were one of those players, and I appreciate you for doing that. Thank you very much one more time. Now here's the Q&A. I'm going to start out with Woody. Woody, you're on the spot, buddy, because you always ask one question. Hopefully, the speaker, the ex-speaker, can answer your question a little bit better than anybody else ever did. You know what your question is? You always ask that one question. Come on, let's go. You're up.
Hey, Todd, my name is Woody. And I'm just wondering, I almost came up and stood up before Bob even mentioned it. How much of the House rules have been transferred from what the Democrats had when they were in charge for the House rules?
Well, that was a tough day. I will remember that. Opio led the charge, and Mike and Paul may have to help me in terms of, what percent did we change? I know we made major changes in the amendment process, and boy, you're testing my memory now. But in the amendment process, in terms of submittal, but in terms of a percentage, I don't know. The one thing we ran into a lot at that time, and I don't know what it's like now. I'm ashamed to say I haven't kept up with what the House rules, and these guys might want to speak to what the House rules are now. But at that time, we were bound. It was tough to make unilateral decisions because we would cripple ourselves so much if some of the things we wanted to do, we couldn't do because it would put us at such a disadvantage as in terms of the negotiations with the Senate. And so I'm really not doing a very good job of answering this, but Mike or Paul, do you all have anything to add to what the kind of the current situation is?
Let's just that's good. I mean,
yeah, well, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I mean, gosh, age starts sitting in on us. We can't remember all that stuff. In fact, that's why the state of Oklahoma issues the driver's license, not to drive, so you can find your way home at night. Okay, let's do your question, Woody.
Yeah, my main question is about the Constitution, Article Section 534, where it says that every bill shall be read on the floor 3 times. And nowhere in the Constitution of Oklahoma does it allow any committee or any one person to kill a bill. Yet that happens all the time. And I think there's been a lot of good bills that haven't passed because there's been 1 or 2 members of the House or the Senate or whatever in positions of power that have usurped this power. Killed a lot of good bills, like the personhood bill. I think that was one that died. They're supposed to be read on the floor, but they're not.
Okay. Now that's a little bit of a tough question. Then we'll get Gary wants to answer that. Can you kind of answer that?
Odelia Dank is, of course, passed away last year, and a dear friend. But she took it on one year to implement that very thing, and they, of course, just like they did all of us, they treated her like trash. They tried to embarrass her, make fun. The press was making fun of, but she would stand up because she volunteered to read. And of course, Adelia, if those of you that knew her, that she was a teacher, and she by trade in her younger years, and so she would stand up and she would read just like a teacher reading to a classroom, and she would stand there and read an entire bill standing on the House floor. It was more to make a point. Can you practically do that? Probably not. And I don't know what the rules are now, but I would say you probably can't. We were all for it at the time, but the point being at the time was whether you interpret that literally, whether first, second, and third reading is what we have, which the way it operates under the assumption that the members have read it. And I know that's probably not always a good assumption, but it operates under that assumption. Should there be 3 physical readings? I would hope not. I really, and I think that's probably, maybe disagrees with your position a little bit, but I would hope that we wouldn't need that, because it would just be it would make the process so difficult. But should bills have a fair opportunity to be heard? Yes. And should, more importantly, and that was the point we were trying to make at the time, we used to vote on bills that were still, they were literally hot to the touch. The Democrats would come up the aisles, the vote would be on the board, and the pages would be coming up the aisles passing out the bills. And you guys remember when it was like that. And that was the point we were trying to make. Not that we felt, not all of us, some probably did, but not that I necessarily felt that every bill should be physically read, but everyone should have an opportunity to read every bill.
Question?
I'm Gary. I want to point out that in 2004, when we took over the House, the voter registration in Oklahoma was 55% Democrat and 35% Republican. I checked the numbers today, and on active voters, there are more active registered Republicans in the state of Oklahoma for the first time in history than Democrats.
Okay, that's interesting. Question?
I'm Woody again. Now, about the reading of the bills, that's very important because that's what's in the Constitution. But the biggest thing that I have a problem with is these bills being killed. Not even the governor can kill a bill. The governor can veto a bill, but it has the opportunity to be overridden. But you've got bills now that have been proposed that haven't been voted on. And the only way to pass a bill is to vote on it. The only way to kill a bill is to vote on it.
Now, we had at the time the ability for a discharge petition. Do they still have?
Yes.
The discharge?
No, hold on. Let him answer the question. Okay, yes, they do. There's still discharge. In fact, I understand last week or a couple of weeks, there have been a couple of those going, and one may have passed, one may not have, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but the discharge petition was the avenue that we had back then, and you could gather signatures from the committee to and it was a difficult process. But government is designed to create debate and input, and to make sure that every side and every angle has been heard. And so by design, it's difficult to pass a bill. It's difficult to get a discharge petition executed.
Now remember, Todd is not the current speaker. Okay.
Yeah, I've been going for 8 years. I'm sure it's a lot better place now than when I left.
Okay, question.
Okay, the important thing is for the word to get out. And I'm not trying to, nail you with anything. But I don't see anywhere in the Constitution where there is this discharge petition or need to have one, because the rules already say, read the bill 3 times on the floor and then vote on it. It's not Constitution be damned for convenience. It's Constitution followed for the people, because that's the power that we gave you. We didn't give you this other power.
Okay.
Well, I certainly believe we should follow the Constitution, and I'm sorry, I know I'm butchering my answer, and it's just been too long, and I don't know. I would have to look at it to be able to speak more intelligently, and I'm embarrassed that I can't right now.
Question.
It's kind of a clarification. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the old rules because I came in with the majority in '04, so I don't know the rules that you used to live under before then. Yes, we do have a discharge petition, but one thing that hasn't changed, and it's some changes that Representative Murphy and I and Reynolds and a few others have been pushing for years, and we still haven't quite gotten there. Ultimately, the Speaker of the House has authority whether a bill will be heard. Sometimes that's translated down to the chairman of the committee. They'll kill the bill. But ultimately, if the Speaker does not desire a bill to be heard, it's not going to get heard. And that happened under Democratic regimes, and it's happened under all of our Republican speakers since. So I don't know how you get away from that. That's just the way it is.
That kind of makes me think of a question, because we hear that all the time. How much power does a speaker really have? A speaker on killing bills or whatever. Oh, I mean, obviously, probably ultimate power, is that correct or not?
Yes, the speaker,
Okay.
yeah, the speaker can single-handedly, or at least when I was there, the speaker could single-handedly prevent a bill from being heard. Now, could that, well, that's what I started saying. Now, there were processes in place then to override the speaker, just like there are processes in place to override a governor on a veto. And
Okay, question.
Richard, the House allows 8 bills to be introduced at a time, and it makes 800 bills being introduced. As a citizen, I can't spend that much time reading the bills and talking to my legislator. What do you think about having the legislators filter down the number of bills that the legislator introduces? He should be filtering rather than the speaker.
well, and attempts have been made. When I first came in, you didn't have limits, and I think the limit, it ended up being 8 when I was there, I think, and so it must be the same. Apparently, it hadn't changed. Is that still right? Is it an 8 bill limit now?
Personal bill.
Personal bills.
But doesn't that take place in a committee? I mean, you got committee chairmans. And I
No,
mean-
they can get more.
Okay.
Well, and you can repeal bills, and that doesn't count.
Okay, now everybody can't hear you over here. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, question.
Well, actually, a statement, question. The statement is that the Constitution says it'll be read 3 times. It doesn't require a vote. It says it'll be read 3 times, so we can kind of solve a little bit of that. We've got the discharge position, but I was just going to reflect on my most entertaining time the first 2 years was when the governor's staff didn't correctly balance the budget. And we brought the whole thing to a standstill, and he realized for the first time, even though we were still in the minority, that he had to negotiate with us. I don't recall what we got, maybe you do, but I insisted that we get it in writing, and you all went back, and we sat there in the caucus room for several hours until they realized, you're not getting any more bills the rest of the day until you come to grips with what we want. And if you might reflect on that.
Oh, I had forgotten about that, and I don't remember what the outcome was now. I just remembered it was an opportunity that we had, because they had misstepped, and of course we capitalized on it, but I can't remember what the outcome was.
Well, we won, but I don't remember what we won.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm sure it was a good prize. I hope.
That's a great thing about victory. When you don't remember what you want, must have been a huge victory.
Yeah, it must have been big since I can't remember.
Okay. Next question. Let me go over here. Randy, I'll be with you next.
I've got lots of relatives in Colorado. Colorado used to be like Oklahoma, and it was funded, a lot of the gains that they made in Colorado. George Soros pumped tons and tons and tons of money in Colorado. Colorado is not conservative anymore. What are we going to do to make sure that the kids don't go the same way that the kids in Colorado did and support all the new social issues?
This. Exactly what you're doing,
Look at the age in the room.
Well,
except for that guy there, everybody's over 50.
I would not disagree that is a problem, but you also have, you have a very vibrant young Republican group in the state, and I mean that's just the party affiliated group, but there are some young groups, not enough. I'm not trying to say there's not a challenge. I mean, there is absolutely a challenge, but all we can do is just this, because if Soros wants to come in with his money and do his thing, there's nothing to stop that. And so, except for education, and fortunately, with information being so readily available now, so many young people are better informed than what I think they used to be. Now, informed correctly or incorrectly, that's an issue in itself, but they're definitely more informed.
And that's part of the problem with what we're dealing with, but I don't think anything's really ever changed, because most people this time of day on a Friday, where they're at is working. Mm-hmm. They do not have the opportunity to come down here and do this kind of thing. So obviously, what we're doing is very important to pass that message on, the same way that I'm gonna say it's very important for us to remember whence we came, where we came from. We had a majority, super majorities in both houses, all the statewide elected people were Democrats, on and on and on. Now again, I'm not just here to vilify Democrats, because we need to vilify some Republicans and we don't agree with either. We're gonna do that kind of stuff. But we gotta remember history and how hard it was, a challenge to get where we're at today. A lot of people working, not just a few of us. And most people, I'm gonna poll in here a little bit, I'm gonna ask Paul, but how many 5 years ago were engaged in anything, in any kind of political activities at all? 5 years ago, raise your hand if you were. Okay. See, that's where we're at. I mean, and that's kind of America. We know from principle history, only 3%, I think we talked about this the other day, you and I, the history, we know only 3% fought in the Revolutionary War, only 13% even agreed with the movement, only 13%. 87% sit back. And we do also know that all those colonists, they were subjects of the King George. They were not Americans because there was no America. They would all been killed as traitors. I mean, the ones that participated. So again, nothing's really changed. I mean, really. We in this room are like founding fathers in a way. And Todd's a founding father. Mike Reynolds, I mean, Gary Jones and Randy Brogdon. I mean, Paul Wesselhoff, he's really a founding father. I mean, my friends like to say that we can't forget about that stuff. And we can't continually vilify people that are in the heat of battle. So again, next question.
Mr. Speaker, I saw you at the Capitol yesterday, and I'm assuming you signed up to run for the Corporation Commission, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Why? That's question number one. Question number two, could you tell us who else is in that race, and what separates you from the other candidates?
This was something, and I've answered that question a lot, especially, first of all, my wife and close friends. Obviously, we've been involved ever since I bought the first suit with the duct tape on it. I've been in.
Todd, do you still have that suit?
No, I don't think so.
Shoot. I was going to see if I could borrow it.
I ended up getting it sewn up though after that day. Wore it for many years. But a lot of people said, why Corporation Commission? Because I've been engaged in supporting candidates for U.S. Senate, Governor, House, State House, State Senate, on and on policy making. That's been 100% of my focus. And to be honest with you, I've just never given a lot of attention to the Corporation Commission races. But what I've been doing the last 8 years, I've dealt with a lot of regulatory matters and nothing directly with the Corporation Commission, but mainly at the federal level, and a lot of federal regulations that I've been having to deal with. For instance, I work for a company called Wetco out of Sand Springs that I have assisted them in regulatory matters on about $125 million in expansion and construction of manufacturing plants and over 1,000 employees. And so, a good thing for Oklahoma that's happening. But what I started seeing was I had never, outside of my experience with my cows years ago, I didn't realize how rogue the federal government has become. And so I'm thinking, what are we going to do about that? I mean, yes, we've got to fight on these policy fronts, and we have to have some people fighting a good fight, especially in Washington. We desperately need some leadership there. But I think we're going to have to take this battle to all fronts. We're going to have to fight on the policy side. We're going to have to fight as a state regulatory body. And here's a guy that got involved in politics because I was mad at some regulators and they treated me like trash. And now I'm running to be a regulator. Now that was really hard for me to process, I will tell you. But I think, the constitutional responsibilities of the Corporation Commission are extremely important to this state. About 2/3 of the state economy is affected one way or the other by daily decisions. The decisions are consequential that are made there every single day. And so, but the thing that we could do, the thing that probably drives me the most is that I think we could use those offices to ask tougher questions of Washington. No, you're not a U.S. Senator, and so at the end of the day, you know, you might lose the battle. But you as a corporation commissioner are in a position, because you are invited to comment on when regulatory policy is being developed and administrative rules being drafted. You are in a place to ask the tough questions. Why, EPA? Why should we do this? How much is it going to cost? And who's it going to benefit? Where's the benefit to this? And I don't know if any of you are familiar on this side of the state. You may not have seen it as much, but the latest thing the EPA has done in northeast Oklahoma, well, they've done it across the state, but fortunately OG&E is pushing back. But they've mandated closure of the coal plants in the state in place to be replaced with natural gas. Well, that sounds good on the surface. You know, we all support natural gas and usage of it, et cetera, and we're a natural gas state and all that, until you dig into it and realize that just this single action by the EPA will likely drive rates up in northeast Oklahoma 20% over the next coming years. Arkansas, EPA led Arkansas, as a matter of fact, there's a coal plant being constructed 20 miles across the state line right now. And so they didn't do it over there, but Oklahoma, I don't know if it had anything to do with the fact that our 77 counties voted against Obama. I don't know if that had any play in there, but for some reason, Oklahoma was targeted to say, close all your coal plants down. And so if you're a manufacturer, where are you going to go? You're going to go to Little Rock or Tulsa if your rates are 20% higher in Tulsa. And so those are the types of things that are driving me, and I want to push back, ask the tough questions, and stand as hard as we can in those positions.
Who you run against and different?
Cliff Brandon is the only one I know of right now. I didn't look this morning, but as of last night, Cliff Brandon and I are the only two in the race.
You know, I think a very important thing that the audience, high nooners, we need to understand, because I really didn't. I started kind of checking into some of this and was told this, that the economy, 2/3 of our economy is controlled, has something to do with the corporation commission. That's huge. I mean, that's huge. And we almost pay that much attention to that race, that corporation commission. I mean, that's a huge thing right there. So let's think about that. Almost 70% of everything in Oklahoma has to do with that corporation commission. So it's very important to elect people that believe in your values, what your values are. And I think that coal plant, that could be a catastrophic issue for certain manufacturers.
Yeah, the other thing too is, I think it's coal plants today, it's whatever's next tomorrow, it may be natural gas they come after. I mean, this administration is against the use of fossil fuels. I mean, let's just face that. That is their end goal, is to ban the use of all fossil fuels. Right now, they're making a little headway with coal. When they get that done, they'll be after the rest of them, I promise you.
Question?
I'm Steve. I think possibly it might be because Oklahoma is the reddest state in the country, and our president is pretty much upset with us. That's not my question. I'm kind of like Woody over here. I believe that if a bill goes through through a committee and is voted on the floor, either the Senate or the House, when it goes to the other house, I think because it has passed the floor, it ought to at least be heard in the committee. Now, that brings up the question of how much influence do special interest groups have in that process of seeing that, okay, here comes a bill that looks like it's going to get passed, we don't want it, and how much influence do special interest groups really have in that process? Because a lot of people, I've been knocking on doors now since last June, and a lot of people are concerned about that.
Yeah, too much. There's no doubt about that. But that's the fault of legislators that do not understand that when we sat there back in the day, Grandpa here, but when I sat in those committee rooms, And those walls were lined, and y'all have all been in those rooms and had this same experience. Those walls are lined with people that are paid to be there to represent a position. If you ever lose sight of the fact, as a legislator, that you are the only voice that the real people have, because the real people don't have time. They don't have the money, they don't have the time. They cannot come to the Capitol and stand up against those walls around that committee room. And so that goes back to just the election process. And is the election process perfect? Are there some people elected that I wish were not elected? Yeah, you know. Do we have a lot of good ones? Yes, we have a lot of good ones too. But it's not a perfect process, but it's the only process we have, and that's why it's so important to identify candidates that share our philosophies, support those candidates, help those candidates. I mean, Reed has been a good friend of mine, a good supporter of mine through the years, and so he can take just as much credit for anything we were able to accomplish during the years that I was there. Reed Downing can take just as much credit as I can, because he was engaged. He was helping me every step of the way.
Thanks for saying that, because that's what we forget about too, sometimes, the heritage that we've been given in the state. There's so many different volunteers that are just working themselves crazy out at the Capitol, doing certain things, trying to move it forward. What I'm going to say pro bono, they're not paid lobbyists, they're just good citizens. And we forget about those people too, because remember, the people at the Capitol, they actually get paid. Guys like Don Spencer, since let's say he had to go back to work, whatever, he doesn't get paid. His compensation is good government, and that's the heart of what he's actually doing. And like Todd's talking about Reed, I mean, Reed's been engaged. Now, obviously, Reed and I had a difference of opinion on a mayor race that just happened. But Reed's my friend. I mean, and I appreciate the efforts and the hard works that he does. I mean, that kind of thing. And we can agree to disagree, and then we need to move on for a better government. That's what the theme actually today is, and I so appreciate some of the stories and the humor. And if we always lose that point of the humor in what we're doing, nobody's going to have any fun. Nobody's ever going to believe in you, because you just got mad because you were mad or frustrated or whatever, and we're never going to do anything. Now that doesn't mean you're giving up your positions, not at all. I still disagree with Reed. We elected the wrong guy as mayor of Oklahoma City. That's what I say. But our side lost, and I need to shut up about it and support who we actually have. And next time we're going to do it again. I mean, we're going to do that again. Any other questions? Todd, really? Okay, you want to make, he's going to make a comment. He's going to hit me upside the head now. Yeah, I'm going to take it. Don't hit me on the ball spot, because it's soft and it's all red.
Todd, I'm not going to say anything about your loss. Todd, you have a talent that I saw displayed at the Lincoln Reagan dinner. You're an auctioneer. I'd like you to demonstrate to these folks just how good an auctioneer you are. Bob's iPad is up there. Would you auction that off?
Please don't do that. Go ahead and auction something off.
Oh goodness, is my face turning red? I'm redder than usual. I had 71, 2, 3, $4. $6, 7, 7, 8, 8, 9, 80. You know, you're supposed to be bidding. I said, hey, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Thank you very much. Thanks again. I mean, thanks again for coming. Come back whenever you want. You're always, now, here's the deal with how you become a high nooner. You come twice. The first one's on us, the second one's on you. So, again, thank you very much for coming. Next week, what we're going to do at High Noon Club next week, we're not going to have a political discussion on candidates, who's the best candidate, but we're going to invite candidates to come, and how many come, we're going to kind of separate the time out and give them the time to speak. If there's so many there, we'll give them 5 minutes or whatever, and they can demonstrate why they're running for political office, whoever they are. I mean, I'm going to say if ex-Senator Randy Broad wants to come and he wants to tell why he's running for the for Coburn's job, well, let's have it. And Richard, I know Richard's running as an independent for the governor. He gets some time, that kind of thing. And you'll have that little amount of time. So invite whoever your favorite candidate is for public office to come next week, and we're going to give them some mic time up front and tell them why they're actually running.
Are you still having the U.S. candidates come?
No, not trying to, but different deal, okay, just different deal. But if you want to come next week, you can come and talk about your race and why you should be elected to public office, not just you, okay?
No, but you aren't putting that together.
I'm trying to. I'm trying to. So this is a little bit different format, so it's kind of open mic live next week on why you should be elected to public office. And thanks again to ex-speaker Todd Hiett, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks, everybody.